The heat on Interstate 74 doesn't just sit on your skin. It crawls. It presses. It feels like the sun itself is leaning down on you, breathing right into your face. And that afternoon, around 3:40 p.m., the whole desert looked like it was melting. The road shimmered so hard you couldn't tell where the asphalt ended and the horizon began. Officer Mason Hale had been through a lot of boring patrols before, dead quiet days where even tumbleweeds refused to roll. But nothing felt like that moment. Because 1 second he was just driving, wiping sweat off his forehead, thinking about grabbing an iced coffee after shift, and the next second, Bravo froze. And when I say froze, I don't mean the, oh look, a lizard kind of freeze. I mean his entire body locked up like someone hit a switch, shoulders stiff, tail straight out, ears forward, razor sharp. The kind of posture that says, something's wrong, something's very, very wrong. Mason didn't even notice at first. He was messing with the AC vents, grumbling because the unit kept blowing warm air again. But then the leash jerked. Just once, but with force. Mason glanced down. Bravo. What is it, bud? The dog didn't look at him, didn't move, didn't even breathe. His gaze was nailed to the road ahead like he could see straight through time. And that's when Mason noticed the van. A beat-up Chevy, paint faded to some miserable blue-gray, wobbling in its lane like the driver didn't care enough to keep it straight. Nothing unusual for a desert highway, but something felt off. Something that tightened Mason's stomach before he even understood why. Okay. Relax, Mason muttered, even though his pulse was picking up. It's just a van. But Bravo wasn't relaxing. If anything, the dog lowered his body like he was preparing to launch himself through the windshield. Instinct finally kicked in. Mason pulled closer, just enough to get a better look. Sunlight bounced off the rear window, dirty and smeared like it hadn't been washed in months. Mason squinted, leaned forward, and then he saw it. A face. A tiny face. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, pressed against the glass like she was trying to push her whole body through it. Dirt streaked her cheeks, her hair tangled, her eyes swollen from crying so long she didn't even have tears left. And she was shaking, not trembling, shaking, the kind of shaking that screams, I'm terrified, and I have no one left. Mason's hand slipped. His chest dropped. The air left his lungs. What the hell? The girl lifted one hand, slow, hesitant, pressing it to the glass, fingers trembling so hard he could see it from inside his cruiser. Then she held something up. A scrap of cardboard, dirty, bent, torn. 4 uneven black words. I'm kidnapped. Mason didn't remember breathing, didn't remember grabbing the wheel, didn't remember leaning forward. His body shut down except for vision and adrenaline. And Bravo. Bravo erupted. Not a bark, not a whine. A growl ripped straight from the center of the earth. Deep, raw, primal. The kind of sound that screams instinct. A child is in danger. Save her. Mason's pulse went wild. He could hear it pounding in his ears. Oh God. Okay, hang on, sweetheart. And then the van sped up. No brake lights. No signal. Just acceleration. Bravo lunged, snarling, the leash cutting into Mason's wrist as the dog tried to launch himself forward. The girl slammed her palm against the window again, harder, leaving a faint print in the grime. Her eyes locked onto Mason's, begging with everything she had left. Please, don't let me disappear. Heat rippled across the road. The van drifted farther. Sweat ran down Mason's spine even though the cruiser felt ice cold. Okay, Mason, he whispered. Don't screw this up. He slammed the radio button. Dispatch, this is Unit 28, possible child abduction, Interstate 74, heading eastbound. I need backup now. But even before dispatch answered, before protocol, Mason's foot was already slamming the accelerator. Because Bravo wasn't just reacting. Bravo was warning him. Someone was about to die if they didn't move. The second Ray Doyle hit the gas, everything went sideways, like the world just snapped. One moment the van was wobbling along like some junkyard leftover, and the next, it shot forward so hard the back tires kicked up a wall of dust. Oh, hell, he's running, Mason muttered. Bravo didn't need the announcement. The dog exploded forward, jerking the leash so violently Mason almost dropped it. And look, I'm not exaggerating. The leash burned across his wrist like someone had dragged a live wire over his skin. Bravo! Easy! Easy, boy! But there was no easy left. The second that kidnapper floored it, any sense of calm or control went flying out the window. The whole desert suddenly felt alive. Wind slamming against the cruiser, sand whipping in tight circles, the sky bright enough to blind anyone who stared too long. Mason mashed the accelerator. The cruiser lurched forward so hard, everything in the cup holders bounced. Red and blue lights burst across the sand like someone had ripped open the sky. Unit 28 in pursuit, Mason spat into the radio, voice shaking. Suspect vehicle refusing to stop. Possible child inside. Correction. Confirmed child inside. He didn't wait for dispatch. Didn't need to. All he could see was that van. That damn van. And behind him, Bravo kept pulling like he was trying to drag the entire cruiser faster. Buddy, we are going, Mason said, breathless, because honestly, the dog felt like he was about to pull the wheel himself. The heat outside was insane, the kind that bends the air itself. You ever look across a grill and see how everything waves? Imagine that, stretched across the entire desert. The van ahead swerved hard, like Ray didn't even care if he flipped it. Jesus, he's desperate, Mason whispered. What the hell is he doing? Time 700 pounds. Bravo barked, sharp, frantic. And that bark? It wasn't just a bark. It was a warning siren. Then something wild happened. A gust of hot wind slammed across the road, kicking up a massive swirl of sand. The sand hit the cruiser so hard, Mason squinted instinctively. Even with a windshield in front of him, the whole unit shook. "Come on, stay with me," Mason muttered, leaning forward like his weight alone could make the cruiser faster. The van dipped suddenly to the right, onto the desert shoulder. Dust exploded everywhere. And I mean everywhere. It looked like Ray had driven straight through a sandstorm that hadn't even existed 2 seconds ago. "Don't you dare flip," Mason growled, because if that van rolled, Emma could be crushed. Bravo let out another low growl, rumbling deep in his chest like thunder warming up. "Yeah, I know, buddy, I know," Mason whispered. "We're not letting her disappear. Not today." The cruiser hit 90 miles an hour, then 95. Mason wasn't thinking about speed, or protocol, or his own safety. All he saw was the little girl, face pressed to the glass, shaking like she was freezing in the middle of a 100-degree desert. "This guy picked the wrong day to run," Mason muttered, gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles went bone white. The van swerved again, fishtailing before Ray regained control. Sand blasted behind the van like a miniature sand bomb. "He's driving like he doesn't care if he lives or dies," Mason breathed. "Damn it! Come on!" Bravo barked again. But this one was different. Higher, sharper, almost like he was begging Mason to move faster. And that shook Mason more than anything. Bravo never sounded scared. Rate slow. Ever. The wind slammed across the cruiser again, rattling the frame. Tires vibrated under Mason's feet, fighting to keep traction on melting hot pavement. Ahead, the van drifted left, crossing into the oncoming lane. "Oh no, 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 don't you do that," Mason snapped. "Stay straight, damn it." The highway was empty, but that didn't matter. One wrong twitch and the whole thing could spin. Then the van jerked hard right, throwing up another blast of sand that smashed into the cruiser. "Ray Doyle, you son of a—" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Bravo snarled, so deep and violent the entire cruiser felt it. "Hang on, Emma," Mason whispered. "Hang on, sweetheart. We're right here." The van surged forward, engine roaring like something wounded and furious. Mason slammed the accelerator. Bravo lunged again, and the chase shifted into something darker, something heavier, something that felt like hope itself was slipping through Mason's fingers. But he wasn't letting go. Not while that little girl was still in that van. Not while Bravo fought the leash like he was ready to tear the world apart to reach her. The desert blurred into streaks of gold and gray. Sirens screamed across the empty highway, and the line between life and death grew thinner with every passing second. And honestly, after the way that van shot across the desert, like it had nothing left to lose, it almost felt impossible that anything worse could be happening inside it. But yeah, things were even darker in there than anything playing out on the highway. Inside that filthy Chevy, the heat was brutal. Not normal heat. Thick, heavy, choking. The kind of air that doesn't move. The kind that sits on your chest. Emma Whitlock could barely breathe. Her wrists were raw from the rope digging into them. Her cheeks streaked with dust and dried tears. Every bump in the road slammed her tiny frame into the metal walls, the whole van rattling like it was falling apart. And then Ray Doyle snapped. "Sit down," he barked, voice cracking with something between fear and anger. Not anger at her, anger at the world, at the cops, at the dog he'd seen chasing them. Emma didn't even have time to flinch. He reached back, fast, and grabbed a fistful of her hair. Not gentle, not warning, full force. Emma tried to scream, but it came out as a choked gasp. Her throat was too dry, too worn out. Ray yanked her forward and slammed her down. Her forehead struck the metal floor with a thud so loud it echoed inside the van. Her vision flashed white. For a moment, she didn't know if she was awake, dreaming, or falling into some dark hole. Ray shoved her again. "I said stay down!" She curled up instinctively, arms tight to her chest, knees drawn in, trying to make herself smaller. But he didn't stop. He grabbed a dirty shop rag and shoved it toward her mouth. "Shut up! Don't make a sound!" Emma's breath hitched. She shook her head, barely. "Don't! Please don't!" He pressed the rag harder. "What did I just say?" Not loud. Worse. Calm. Cold. Measured. Emma's heart pounded so hard she felt it in her throat. Her skin burned not from the heat, but from terror. The kind of terror that steals breath, steals thought, steals voice. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, tiny gasps. And the worst part? She knew deep in her bones that if this van stopped in the middle of the desert, if Ray decided she was too much trouble, nobody would ever find her again. Not out here. Not in this endless heat. Not in this empty place where even sound seemed to die. She pressed her forehead to the metal floor, trying to breathe, trying to stay awake, trying not to cry. Because crying made Ray angrier. "I'm going to disappear," she thought. "I'm really going to disappear." Her whole body shook, not a small tremble, a full body shaking like her bones were trying to escape her skin. And Ray? He didn't care. He didn't even look back. He just kept driving, cursing the cops, cursing the heat, cursing that damn dog. The van hit another bump. Emma's shoulder slammed into a toolbox. Pain shot down her arm, sharp and electric, but she didn't have the voice to cry out. She lifted her head, just a little, just enough to see the back window. Dust coated the glass thick, but she pressed her cheek against it anyway. Maybe she'd see police lights. Maybe she'd see the dog. Maybe. But she saw nothing. Just swirling sand and empty light. Her heart sank. Her tiny fingers curled into fists. Weak, trembling fists that couldn't do anything. She felt so small, so breakable, like the desert had swallowed her whole. Emma closed her eyes. Her mother's voice floated through her mind. "If you're ever lost, don't scream. Look for a dog. A dog will hear what people don't." Emma opened her eyes again, forcing herself up. just a little. She looked out the window. Nothing. Just emptiness. The van shook again, slamming her back to the floor. She hit her hip hard and let out a tiny whimper. All she had left. She thought it was over. Thought the chase was fading. Thought she was slipping into that dark place where nobody ever comes back. But then, a sound. Faint. Sharp. Outside. A bark. Cutting through the desert like a blade of hope. Emma's eyes shot open. Her breath caught. That dog. He was still there. He hadn't given up. Not on her. And that tiny spark, just a spark, lit inside her chest. But if you were in her place, terrified, alone, what would you hold on to? 1. Hope. 2. Fear. Or that one tiny sign that someone's still coming for you? And just when it felt like the darkness inside that van was swallowing Emma whole, something shifted. Something small. Something quick. But something that changed everything. It started with a sound. A rattling. A loose metal kind of rattle. Like something barely hanging on. The back door. For what felt like hours, even though it hadn't been, that door had been clattering, vibrating with every bump in the road. But this time, the hinge gave way. Just enough for the smallest sliver of light to break through. A thin crack. Not even an inch wide. But in a place that felt like a coffin on wheels, an inch was everything. Emma blinked. Once. Twice. The sunlight stabbed into her eyes. Sharp, warm, blinding. She winced, pulled back, then leaned in again. She didn't know why she did it. Instinct. Hope. Desperation. But she crawled toward that crack, fingers trembling so hard she could barely move them. And then, God. She saw movement outside. Not dust. Not highway. Something alive. Something fast. Something running. Her heart stuttered. She leaned closer, forehead pressing against the metal, ignoring the sting, and there he was. Bravo. Charging beside the van like a creature made of muscle and fire and pure willpower. His paws hammered the pavement so fast they blurred, tiny sparks flicking off from the heat. His chest heaved. His eyes locked forward, with a focus that didn't belong to any normal dog. Emma's breath caught. He's here. He came back. Bravo didn't look tired, didn't look scared. He looked furious, like he had decided the world wasn't allowed to take her. And somehow, he looked at her through that crack. When their eyes met, something inside her, something shrinking, fading, woke up. Like her soul jumped. Emma lifted her hand. Slowly. So slowly, she wasn't sure it was moving. Her palm pressed against the cold metal, fingers spreading, searching for connection. That was the moment she gave everything she had left. Her fear, her hope, her last bit of strength. She pressed that tiny hand to the window as if she were handing Bravo her heartbeat. Please, please see me. Bravo's ears shot forward, and then the world cracked open. He barked. Not just a bark, a roar inside a howl, inside a promise. A sound that tore down the highway and slammed into the van like a force. A sound that said, I see you. I'm here. I'm not letting you disappear. Emma's throat tightened. Her eyes stung. Not with fear, but something warmer. That sunlight slicing through the crack lit her face again. And it felt, yeah, dramatic as it sounds, like the light was lifting her. She was seen. She was known. She wasn't alone. The van jerked sideways. Emma stumbled but kept her hand on the window. She refused to let the moment go. Bravo surged closer, practically brushing the side of the van with every stride. Emma leaned harder. Please don't leave me, her voice cracking. Bravo barked again, louder, harsher, like he was shouting at fate itself. Mason's cruiser was behind them somewhere, sirens screaming across the desert. But Emma barely noticed. Her world had shrunk to a dog chasing a van with everything he had. The van hit a pothole. Emma lurched forward, pain tearing through her shoulder. Bravo stumbled, a tiny hitch, but then exploded forward again. Something clicked inside Emma. Something sharp. Something brave. Maybe she couldn't scream, couldn't run, couldn't fight Ray Doyle. But she could do this. She could hold her hand up. She could let Bravo know she was still here, still alive, still fighting. Her fingers pressed so hard against the window she thought they might crack. And Bravo's eyes never left hers. It was like, the best way to describe it, that tiny crack in the door had become a bridge between them. A bridge stronger than fear, stronger than heat, stronger than Ray Doyle. For the first time since she was taken, Emma believed she might survive. Bravo barked again, deeper than before, a bark that vibrated through her ribs even from outside the van, and she whispered, barely a breath against the glass, Okay, okay, I trust you. The van lurched violently, snapping the moment in half. But that spark, that connection, that promise, it didn't break, not even a little. And right when Emma's hand was still pressed to that shaking window, when that tiny crack of sunlight felt like the only thing holding her together, that's when everything erupted outside. Because Bravo didn't just run beside the van anymore. He launched. It happened so fast that later, even Mason couldn't explain it. One moment Bravo was pounding the pavement, legs moving so fast they blurred. And the next, he was airborne. Not jumping like a normal dog airborne. No, this was like something out of a movie none of them deserved to be in. Bravo's muscles bunched. His back legs kicked off the asphalt, and he shot upward with a force that felt physics breaking. Dust exploded beneath him, like the road itself reacted. Mason's breath caught. Bravo! No! Wait! Too late. Bravo hit the side of the van, claws scraping metal, sparks spitting into the air. His jaws snapped open, white teeth flashing, then clamped down on the edge of the back door. Metal shrieked under his bite. Emma felt the van yank sideways from the impact. Ray cursed, gripping the wheel tighter, swerving like a drunk man trying not to lose control. "What the? Get off!" Ray shouted, twisting the steering wheel so hard the tires screamed. Bravo held on. He held on like the entire world was hanging from his teeth. And in a way, it was. Emma jolted as the van jerked left, then right, then back again as Ray tried to fling Bravo off into the desert. Her head smacked the wall, but she didn't pull her hand away. She knew, she felt, that Bravo was right there. Outside, Bravo's hind legs slammed the pavement, scraping, burning, trying desperately to find grip. The poor dog was basically skiing across asphalt with his back half while his front half hung onto a moving van, like the universe had given one dog permission to defy reality. "Bravo! Drop it! Bravo! Let go!" Mason screamed, panic slicing through his voice. But Bravo, he didn't twitch, didn't even consider letting go because Emma was inside that van, because she'd reached for him, because she trusted him, and Bravo wasn't abandoning that, not for anything. Ray swerved harder, the whole van wobbling like it was about to flip. Sand and gravel spat out behind them. The engine roared, the entire chassis shook like its bolts were coming loose. "Let go, you stupid mutt!" Ray yelled, slamming his elbow into the window as he fought for control. Bravo growled, a deep, vibrating sound too big for his body. His jaws tightened, teeth sinking deeper into the twisted metal. The door bent, actually bent. Emma saw it. Metal twisting inward like it was a soda can. Her eyes widened. Her breath froze. He wasn't letting go. Inside the cruiser, Mason felt something break inside him. Fear, anger, pride, tangled together in a mess he didn't have time to name. "Bravo, buddy! Please don't do this to me!" He pushed the accelerator harder. "You're gonna get yourself killed!" But Bravo wasn't listening. This wasn't instinct anymore. This was choice. The van lurched again, hitting another uneven patch of asphalt. The whole vehicle bounced, slamming Bravo's body against the metal, but his teeth held like steel. Emma cried out. Not from pain, but from something else. Something sharp. Something overwhelming. "He's here. He really came for me." Ray snarled and jerked the wheel so hard the van tilted, lifting on two wheels for a second. Emma's stomach dropped. Bravo's back paws skidded, nails shredding, blood smearing across the asphalt as he fought to stay upright. Mason's heart stopped. "Bravo! Get back! Let go! Damn it! Let go!" But he couldn't. Not until she was safe. The van slammed back onto four wheels, throwing Bravo downward. His chest hit the road hard, but his jaws only clenched tighter. And then, something unbelievable. The door hinge, already loose, gave way. The back door jerked outward with a violent metallic pop. Bravo swung with it, body lifting off the ground as the door flapped like a wing. Light blasted into the van, flooding everything in gold. Ray cursed. No, 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 damn dog! Bravo growled deeper, a sound that rolled through the entire van, through Emma's bones, through her chest, a sound that said, I'm not letting you go. The van fishtailed, the desert blurred, and Bravo, bleeding, shaking, defying gravity itself, held on with everything he had left. Because for Emma, this was the moment that separated life from disappearance, the moment that turned a terrified little girl into someone who dared to believe again. And the crazy part is, right when Bravo was hanging onto that door like the whole world depended on his teeth, that's when everything completely snapped out of control. The van finally lost its fight with gravity. It veered off the road, sliding sideways into the desert shoulder. Wheels churned up sand like a mini tornado, dust exploding everywhere. And then, boom! It slammed into a shallow ditch with a brutal, bone-shaking crunch. Emma was thrown forward. She hit the metal wall so hard it stole the air from her lungs. For a second, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. Then, the next sound she heard was the door ripping off completely. Bravo's weight and Ray's reckless swerving combined into one violent yank, and the door flew off, tumbling into the sand like a giant chunk of scrap metal. And then Ray Doyle made the worst move of his life. He grabbed Emma by the arm, hard, and yanked her out of the wrecked van. Not gently, not like someone escaping danger, more like someone grabbing a shield. Emma stumbled, knees hitting sand, vision spinning, and before she could even understand where she was, Ray pulled her tight against his chest, and then she felt it. Cold metal, pressed under her jaw. A knife. Old. Rusting. Serrated. It trembled in Ray's hand, not from guilt, but from panic. Rage. Desperation. Come any closer and she's done, Ray snarled, voice cracking like his sanity was splitting apart. Emma froze, her whole body locked. Breath stuttered, legs barely existed anymore. She could feel the blade, actually feel it. Every shaky inhale, brushing her skin against the cold steel. Her eyes watered, not from tears, but pure instinctive terror. One wrong twitch, one wrong bump, one wrong breath, and she'd be gone. Mason was only 10, maybe 12 feet away, close enough to see every detail, but far enough that one wrong move meant losing her. He stopped so fast his boots kicked up dust. Ray, hey man, listen, Mason said, voice shaking. We don't need to do this. Let her go, we can figure something out. Ray pressed the knife harder. Emma gasped, a faint broken sound that ripped something open inside Mason's chest. Back up, Ray barked. I swear to God, I'll cut her if you move. Mason lifted both hands slowly, palms out. Didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't dare. Because the look on Ray's face wasn't just fear. It was a man drowned in desperation, past the point of no return. Ray, Mason pleaded softly. Look at me. Don't look at her. Look at me. She's a kid, man. A kid. Ray's grip tightened. Emma whimpered. A tiny, helpless sound that made Mason feel like the desert opened beneath him. His heart didn't just race, it hurt, like someone squeezing it from the inside. "Don't you make a move!" Ray screamed. And then Mason saw something behind him. Bravo, covered in dust, bleeding from the paws, chest heaving like he'd run through hell, but standing, still standing. The damn dog refused to stay down. Bravo's ears pinned back, teeth bared, muscles coiled tight, ready to launch. Emma felt Ray's arm tighten and opened one eye just enough to see Bravo through the haze of dust. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not words, not thoughts, just a knowing, a promise. Bravo growled, low, deep, the kind of sound that vibrated across the sand and straight into Ray's nerves. "Call off the dog!" Ray screamed, dragging Emma backward, knife scraping her skin. Mason's voice cracked. "Bravo, stay! Stay, buddy! Just don't move!" Bravo didn't move, but he didn't calm down either. His whole body shook with fury, his breathing a storm. Emma sucked in a tiny breath, or tried to, but the knife pinned her airway. Her vision blurred, knees buckled. She was seconds from passing out. Mason saw it. "Ray, she's losing consciousness," he whispered. "You're crushing her. You're cutting off her air." "I said back off!" "I can't," Mason choked. "I can't move unless you put the knife down." "Please, man, look at her. She's barely breathing." Ray hesitated. Just a flicker. But a flicker was enough. Bravo's growl dropped another octave. Dark, primal, final. Emma's lips trembled. Her voice escaped, barely a breath. "Bravo. Help." Ray jerked. Mason flinched, and Bravo lowered his head, muscles ready to explode. Because right now, everything was hanging on one single breath from a terrified little girl. And honestly, the moment Emma whispered Bravo's name, barely a sound, more like a breath that almost didn't exist, that's when the world seemed to snap in half. Because Bravo heard it. Not with his ears, with something deeper. Instinct woven with loyalty and fury. And Ray? Ray didn't even have time to understand what was coming. 1 second he had the knife pressed to Emma's throat, grip locked around her like a human vice. And the next, Bravo moved. No. Moved is too soft. He exploded. It was like someone fired a living bullet straight out of the dirt. 1 instant he was crouched, trembling with fury. The next, he was airborne, slicing through the desert heat like a streak of lightning. Mason didn't even have time to yell. Not a warning, not a no, not a go. Everything happened faster than a heartbeat. Bravo slammed into Ray's chest, hard, with a force that made a sound. This awful heavy thud, like a sandbag dropped from a roof. Ray's body jerked backward, feet leaving the ground before gravity dragged him down. The knife. It didn't just fall. It flew. spinning out of Ray's hand and slicing through the air before landing in the sand with a sharp metallic clink. Ray hit the ground hard, air blasting out of him in one violent gasp. Bravo didn't bite him, didn't tear, didn't even pin him. He just used every ounce of strength to knock the man off Emma. And it worked. Emma was free. Kind of. Because the second Bravo hit Ray, Emma's knees buckled. Her whole body realized how close she'd been to dying. She started to fall, face first, toward the sand. But Mason... God. Mason moved like someone possessed. He lunged forward, arms out, diving those last few feet like he was tackling time itself. His hands caught Emma's arms just before she collapsed. And it was close. Ridiculously close. Half a second slower, maybe a quarter, and her head would have slammed the ground. But he caught her. Caught her on the edge. Got you. Got you, sweetheart. I got you. Mason gasped, voice shaking like he was the one who'd almost died. Emma dropped into his chest, limp, trembling, fingers curling into his uniform like she needed something, anything, to anchor her back into the world. Her whole body shook in tiny, jerky motions, fear bleeding out of her faster than she could control. "You're safe," Mason whispered, voice cracking. "You hear me? You're safe now, I promise." And that promise hurt. Not bad hurt. Heart hurt. Because this grown man, this officer who'd seen everything, was shaking just as badly as she was. He held her head gently, not to hide her, but to remind her she wasn't alone anymore. Behind them, Ray groaned, half-dazed, coughing as he tried to understand what hit him like a freight train disguised as a dog. Bravo stood over him, not attacking, just standing there, chest puffed, teeth bared, fur bristling, every breath a sharp, furious warning. Ray lifted one hand, maybe to get up, maybe to reach for Emma again. Nobody knew. But Bravo leaned down with a growl so deep the earth practically vibrated. Ray froze, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Emma whimpered into Mason's chest. Not fear, but relief. "It's okay. It's okay," Mason whispered, rocking her without noticing. "I'm right here. Bravo's right here. You're not going back in that van. You're not going anywhere." Bravo barked once, short, sharp, like he was saying, "Yeah," what he said. Mason pulled Emma back just enough to see her face. Dusty, pale, eyes glassy, like part of her was still halfway inside the nightmare. But she was breathing, still here. And that hit Mason harder than anything else. Because this little girl, this terrified, brave, unbelievably strong kid, was alive because a dog refused to let fear or physics stop him. Mason swallowed hard, squeezed her shoulder, grounding her, grounding himself. "You're okay," he whispered again. "You're okay." Behind them, Ray coughed weakly. Bravo blocked him instantly. One more growl, low and final. And in that strange, suspended moment, where adrenaline softened just a little, Mason realized something. This wasn't the end, not even close. Dust still moved on the horizon. Wind still shifted. Danger still lingered. The nightmare wasn't finished. Not yet. So tell me, be honest. If you saw a dog take down a grown man like that, what would you think first? Holy crap, that dog's a hero? That little girl just got saved by a miracle, or something else entirely. And the really messed up part? The moment Mason thought he finally had a grip on the situation. Like, okay, this nightmare might actually be ending. That's when the next punch landed. It always happens like that, right? The second you breathe, the second your shoulders drop just a little. Boom. Life throws another shadow at you. For Mason, that shadow had a name. Travis Cole. He appeared out of nowhere. Well, technically not nowhere. More like a cluster of cactus and brittle brush behind the ditch. But still, the timing felt unreal. Mason had Emma in his arms, Bravo pinning Ray with that deep, rumbling growl, and then a voice snapped through the dry air. "Ray, what the hell happened?" Mason whipped his head around so fast his neck cracked. There he was, tall, skinny, dirty jeans, sunburned face, and eyes that screamed trouble even before he moved. Travis Cole. The second man. Emma's breath hitched hard against Mason's chest. "Oh no," Mason whispered. "Not another one." Travis didn't wait. Didn't freeze. Didn't even think. He turned and bolted. Straight into the scrubland. "Bravo, no!" Mason shouted. But too late. Bravo's ears shot up. His head snapped toward the fleeing man. An instinct took over. He launched off Ray's chest, sand exploding under his paws, tearing across the desert like a creature forged from fury and purpose. And God, Bravo was fast, even injured, even bleeding, even exhausted. You know those dogs that run like they're flying? Yeah, that. Timer 600 except angrier. Blood dripped from his pads, leaving tiny red dots behind him like breadcrumbs. Mason's heart lurched. "Bravo, get back here!" But the dog wouldn't listen. He couldn't. Not with another threat sprinting toward open land. Travis vanished behind sagebrush, then reappeared farther up the slope, legs pumping like a man who knew the desert better than the law. Bravo didn't slow. Not for a second. Mason froze. Just for a heartbeat. When the truth hit him, Bravo wasn't chasing out of obedience. He was chasing to protect, to finish what he started. And that scared the hell out of Mason. Emma clung to his shirt, still shaking. Dust on her lashes, dirt on her cheek, her tiny fist gripping his collar like she feared he'd vanish too. Hey, Mason whispered, lowering to her level. "You're safe. I promise. Stay right here." He set her behind the cruiser door, shielding her. Ray groaned on the ground. Mason cuffed him fast. Too fast. Hands shaking. "Don't move," Mason growled. "You're done." Ray didn't argue. Mason took off. He sprinted toward the scrubland, boots slipping in sand, adrenaline burning through him like fire. The sun hammered the desert, making everything shimmer. But Mason kept going. He had to. Because Bravo, was running into a wasteland where cops lose footing, where men like Travis know every hiding spot, and where one wrong step could put that dog in a trap or worse. "Bravo!" Mason shouted again. Only the wind answered, and a faint bark. Farther out. Too far. "Damn it, Bravo," Mason muttered. "Why can't you ever wait for backup like a normal dog?" But Bravo wasn't normal. Not even close. Mason reached the edge of the scrubland. A twisted mess of thorns, rocks, dead branches. He skidded to a stop and scanned the tracks. Travis's footprints. Deep, rushed, frantic. Bravo's paw prints, right behind them. Except blood. Small drops. Fresh. Bright. Mason's gut twisted. "Oh no, buddy. What are you doing to yourself?" He pushed forward, brush clawing at his arms, desert heat tightening around him. Every few seconds the wind carried Bravo's bark, short, sharp, focused, hunting. Mason's heart slammed against his ribs. This wasn't training. This wasn't controlled. This was survival. Travis had the terrain. He had the head start. Bravo had instinct and pain and pure, reckless determination. Mason whispered into the desert air, "Buddy, please don't get yourself killed out here." The wind didn't answer. The birds didn't move. The desert stared back. Silent. Waiting. Watching. And that silence, that's when Mason understood. Bravo wasn't chasing because he wanted to. He was chasing because Emma was watching. Because she needed it to be over. Because he refused, absolutely refused, to let the dark come for her again. Mason clenched his jaw. "All right," he muttered. "If he's running into hell, then I'm right behind him." And with that, he pushed deeper into the scrubland, following the trail of blood, paw prints, and fading barks, straight into the unknown. And the deeper Mason pushed into that scrubland, the more the air changed, like the desert itself was warning him, "You're walking into something, boom." But he didn't care. He just kept running, because Bravo's barks were getting sharper, shorter, more frantic. And that is never a good sign. The brush thickened fast, thorny, dry, cracking beneath every step. The sun beat down so hard it felt like the sky itself was trying to collapse. Ahead. Movement. Fast movement. Bravo, then something else. A snap. Not a twig. A quick electrical pop. Mason's blood went cold. "No, no, no. Don't tell me." And yeah, it was exactly what he feared. Bravo burst through a cluster of cactus into a narrow clearing under a dead mesquite tree. He skidded to a stop just for a second. But that second was all Travis needed. The man spun around from behind a fallen log, taser already armed, already aimed, and click. Electricity cracked through the air. Bright blue sparks, a sound like bees wrapped in lightning, and then the impact. Bravo let out a horrible, guttural scream as the prongs hit his side. His whole body jerked violently, legs collapsing beneath him as the shock ripped through his muscles. "Bravo!" Mason screamed, voice cracking like it was tearing out of him. Bravo's paws scraped at the dirt, but his body wasn't listening. Another shockwave rolled through him, his spine arching, teeth clenching so hard Mason swore he heard them grind. Travis laughed, actually laughed. "You dumb mutt!" The taser wires buzzed, glowing against Bravo's fur, the air thick with the sharp, burning smell of electricity on skin. Mason sprinted toward them, boots pounding the ground, dust exploding with each step. "Get away from him!" he roared. But before he reached the clearing, before he could even draw his weapon, someone else moved. Another man. Another one. Hidden behind sagebrush, a shadow lunged forward. Mason didn't see him until it was too late. The man swung a long, heavy branch, dried mesquite wood, right at the back of Mason's skull. The hit. God, the hit was brutal. A sickening crack echoed as the branch smashed into bone. Mason's vision snapped white. His legs buckled. He fell forward onto one knee, gasping like the world just punched the air out of him. Everything blurred, tilting, sliding. He heard Travis shouting, words he couldn't understand. Heard the second man shifting his grip for another swing. Mason forced himself up on one arm, head pounding like a drill was inside it. He turned just in time to see the second man raise the branch again. Higher this time. A killing blow. Mason couldn't move, couldn't lift his arms, couldn't defend himself. He was done. But Bravo wasn't. Because here's the thing about dogs like Bravo. They don't stay down, even when they should. Even when their body screams, "Stop." Even when electricity is still crawling under their skin. Bravo's muscles twitched, then pulled. He dragged himself up, literally dragging his back legs for a moment, before forcing them to hold his weight. His eyes locked onto the man about to kill Mason. And something inside Bravo, something primal, something furious, ignited. He surged forward, not gracefully, not cleanly, like a wounded animal powered by pure instinct. He crashed into the man with a low, savage growl, a sound Mason felt in the center of his bones. The impact knocked the man sideways, the branch swinging wild, missing Mason's head by inches. The guy hit the dirt hard. Bravo towered over him, snarling, shaking, chest twitching from the taser shock. Mason gasped for air, hands trembling as he tried to stand. He couldn't see straight, but he knew. Bravo just saved his life. Again. Travis staggered backward, taser wires still dangling, cartridge empty. He reached for something. A rock, a knife, Mason couldn't tell. But Bravo turned his head with slow, terrifying precision. Travis froze. Bravo's lips curled back. A deep, rattling growl rolled from his chest, a sound that said, "Go ahead. Try it. I dare you." Mason staggered up, gripping a tree trunk to steady himself. His vision swam, but he could see enough. Bravo, shaking, bleeding, barely breathing, stood between Mason and two criminals like a battered, furious guardian. "Bravo," Mason whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Buddy, you're unbelievable." Bravo didn't look back. Not once. He kept his body angled forward, guarding the man he trusted and the girl he refused to lose, even through pain, even through fear, even through electricity still crawling beneath his skin. Because Emma was behind them, and Mason was beside him, and Bravo wasn't losing either of them today. Not today. Not ever. And honestly, as soon as backup finally tore across that desert ridge, sirens echoing off the rocks, dust clouds swirling like a storm rolling in, you'd think Mason might finally breathe again. But no, not when the truth hit. Not when the pieces of this twisted nightmare started clicking together like some sick puzzle. Ray and Travis were face down in the dirt now, wrists cuffed so tight they couldn't twitch a finger. Bravo stood close by, chest still rising fast, fur bristled, body tense like he was ready to launch the second. Either man flinched. Officers swarmed the scene, guns drawn, shouting commands, boots pounding through the sand. It should have felt like victory. Except it didn't. Mason wiped blood from his eyebrow, hands shaking. Not from fear, but from that strange mix of adrenaline and disbelief. He glanced back at Emma, sitting quietly in the back of a cruiser, wrapped in a blanket too big for her, knuckles white as she clutched the seat. Bravo kept glancing at her too, protective, alert, like he wasn't convinced the danger was truly gone. And, well, he wasn't wrong. Two deputies hauled Ray to his knees. The man grunted, spit dirt, and glared at Mason with a smugness that felt like poison. "Let's go," a deputy said. "You can tell your side at the station." Ray laughed. Actually laughed. "You think this ends with me?" he wheezed. "Man, you have no idea what you stepped into." Mason felt something cold slide down his spine. "Start talking," he said quietly. Not shouting, not angry, just controlled. The most dangerous kind of quiet. Ray smirked wider. "We're just the drivers," he muttered. "Middlemen. You know, hand off, pick up, keep moving, quick cash, easy gig." Mason's jaw clenched. "Hand off?" Ray chuckled like Mason was stupid. "Kid's not special," Ray said. "She's inventory." Mason's whole body locked. "What did you just call her?" Ray blinked slow. "You heard me." Bravo growled. Low, heavy, dangerous. A deputy stepped between them. "Easy, buddy." But Ray kept talking, like he enjoyed watching people's skin crawl. "We're part of something bigger," he said. 4 states. 4. We're just one route, one little link in the chain. Mason's knuckles turned white. Travis sat slumped nearby, lip bleeding, but smirking too. "Yeah," Travis added. "You didn't save her. You just delayed delivery." Delivery. Inventory. Middlemen. Each word scraped across Mason's skull. He looked at Emma. Small, shaking, staring out the cruiser window like she wasn't sure the world was real anymore. His throat tightened. "These kids," he whispered. "Where do they go? Who's taking them?" Travis shrugged proudly. "Try figuring that out. We don't know names. Don't want to know. Drop one, pick up another. Keep moving." A deputy cursed softly and turned away. Ray leaned forward. "You want to feel real sick?" He grinned. She wasn't even the only one today. Mason froze. "What did you say?" Ray rolled his eyes. "Dude, she was the easy one, the quiet one. Pickup spot was halfway across the state by sunset. You think she was the only delivery?" Mason saw red. Literal red. He stepped forward. But Bravo moved first, placing himself between Mason and the criminals. "Mason," a deputy warned, gentle but firm. "Don't. He wants you to react." Ray smirked again. "Feels good, doesn't it? Knowing you barely scratched the mouse surface?" Mason clenched his jaw so hard it hurt. "You two are disgusting." Ray shrugged. "We're replaceable." That sentence was the worst of all, because it meant there were others, more drivers, more routes, bigger operations. Mason swallowed hard, voice cracking at the edges. "How many kids? How many have you moved?" Ray's smirk faltered. Just for a second. "A lot." 2 words, but they shattered something in Mason. "Get them out of my sight," he said, voice steady, but barely. Deputies dragged Ray and Travis toward separate vehicles. Bravo limped to Mason's side and sat heavily in the sand. Mason knelt beside him, hand resting on his neck. "You did good, buddy," he whispered. "Better than good." Bravo leaned into him. Tired, hurting, but unwavering. Mason looked toward Emma, small, fragile, alive, and he made himself a silent promise. If this was a chain, he'd break every single link. And after everything, the chase, the crash, the taser, the fight in the scrubland, you'd think the desert would finally go quiet. But the moment Mason walked Emma over to Bravo, something shifted in the air again. Not danger, not fear, something softer, fragile, human. Emma sat on the cruiser's tailgate, legs dangling, wrapped in a blanket so big it almost swallowed her whole. Her cheeks were streaked with dust and dried tears. She wasn't shaking now, but she wasn't steady either. Bravo limped toward her, slow and uneven, like every step was a battle he refused to lose. Mason tried to guide him down, to make him rest, but Bravo pulled away gently and kept going. He wanted her first, needed her first. Emma saw him coming and her breath hitched, not in fear, but something overwhelming. She scooted forward slightly, blanket bunching at her feet. Bravo reached her, lowered himself carefully, like his legs might give out, and rested his big, battered head right on her lap. Emma froze. Then, like something cracked open inside her, she let out a small, shaky sob and buried both hands in his fur. "Oh, Bravo, she whispered. Her shoulders trembled. Her fingers clutched him, like she was afraid he'd disappear if she didn't hold tight. Mason stepped back, giving them space, swallowing a lump in his throat he didn't expect. Emma spoke, not loud, not steady, more like she was talking through pieces of herself that were just now stitching back together. My mom, she whispered. My mom said, if I ever got scared, really scared, I should look for a dog. Bravo lifted his eyes, tired but focused. Emma's voice cracked. She said dogs hear things, feelings, that grown-ups don't. That when you're too scared to talk, dogs can hear you anyway. Bravo's tail tapped, weak but present. Emma kept going, voice trembling. I tried to scream in the van, but nothing came out. My voice wouldn't work. I was too scared. And Ray told me to be quiet or he'd... She stopped, breath shaking. Bravo nudged her side gently. Emma breathed in, thin, fragile. So, I remembered what Mom said. I made the sign. I held it up, and then I pressed my hand on the window, so someone, anyone, would see. She swallowed. But it wasn't anyone. It was you. Bravo pushed his forehead deeper into her lap, breathing rough, exhausted. But he stayed there. Emma ran her hand along his head. Soft, careful, reverent. You heard me, she whispered, even when I didn't say anything out loud. You still heard me. Bravo's ears twitched. Then Emma leaned forward and hugged him. Not tight, not rough, but gently, trembling. Like if she squeezed too hard, he might break. And honestly, Bravo looked like he might. Every muscle shook. His paws were scraped raw. His ribs rose and fell like he was counting every breath. He was covered in dirt, blood, and desert thorns. But he didn't pull away, not even an inch. Mason stepped closer, voice soft. Hey, sweetheart. He's been fighting for you since the moment he saw you. Emma didn't look up. I know, she whispered. I felt it. Mason crouched beside them. Emma, I need you to tell me something, okay? She nodded, small, quiet. Back in the van, Mason said gently, when you pressed your hand on that window, what made you believe Bravo would understand you? Emma lifted her head. Her eyes, red, wet, held something stronger now. Because, she whispered, when I saw him, he wasn't just looking at the van. He was looking at me. Like he already knew something was wrong. Like he was waiting for me to just say it. She pressed her palm to Bravo's cheek. So I did. I said it. Not with words. With my hand. And he answered. Bravo closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. Emma traced his ear, voice barely holding together. When he barked the first time, I thought he heard me. And then I wasn't alone anymore. A tear slid down her cheek, dropping onto his fur. Mason swallowed hard. Because this wasn't instinct. This was connection. Emma whispered, fragile but unbreakable. You saved me, Bravo. You heard me when nobody else could. You came for me. Bravo let out a long, low exhale, almost a sigh, the kind dogs make when they finally stop holding everything in. Emma pressed her forehead to his and whispered, "And I won't forget it. Ever." And after everything they'd survived out there, the desert, the chase, the taser, the knife, the fear, there was this one moment where the whole world finally softened. It happened the second the ambulance doors swung open outside Phoenix Children's Hospital. Emma sat on the gurney, wrapped in a fresh blanket, still clutching Bravo's collar like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. Bravo lay beside her. On his side, chest rising slow, heavy, exhaustion dripping off him in waves. His paws were bandaged, his fur dusty and matted, but his eyes, those tired warrior eyes, never drifted far from her. And then, a scream. Not fear, relief, heartbreak, love. "Emma!" Sarah Whitlock came running down the hall, so fast a nurse tried to stop her and just gave up. Her clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes, hair a tangled mess from days of terror. When she reached her daughter, she didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. She wrapped Emma in an embrace so fierce it looked like she was afraid the world might steal her again. Emma dropped the blanket and clung to her mother's neck. And for a moment, she didn't cry. But then the dam snapped. Her face crumpled, and she sobbed into her mother's shoulder. Deep, shaking, gasping sobs torn straight from the soul. Sarah cried too, loud, raw, shaking in a way that stopped the hallway cold. Nurses paused. Doctors stopped walking. Even a security guard turned away, wiping his eyes. Sarah cupped Emma's face, voice shattering. "Oh my God, baby, my baby, I thought I lost you." Emma didn't answer. She turned her head, searching. Her eyes found Bravo, Sarah, followed her gaze. And when she saw him, really saw him, her chest caved inward. This dog, this exhausted, bleeding dog who had given every last piece of himself to bring her daughter home. Emma slipped from her mother's arms, wobbling as her feet touched the floor, and dropped to her knees beside Bravo. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. "Bravo," she whispered, voice trembling, barely a breath. "You're my hero." A tear slid from her cheek, disappearing into the dust tangled in Bravo's coat. Bravo didn't lift his head. He couldn't. He was too tired, too wounded, too spent. But his tail thumped once. Weak, slow but certain. A signal, a message, a quiet "I'm here." Emma choked, holding his face gently. "You'll come back, right? He He gets to come back? Mason stepped forward, voice soft, steady. Yeah, he's coming back. I promise. Two techs lifted Bravo onto a rolling stretcher. He didn't fight, didn't even try, but his eyes stayed locked on Emma as they pushed him through the double doors. Emma lifted her hand. Bravo blinked and wagged his tail again. Weak, but full of meaning. Mason felt his throat burn. He turned away, pretending his radio needed checking, even though it wasn't on. Sarah held Emma again, whispering into her hair, "You're safe, my baby. You're safe." And finally, the weight in the hallway lifted. Fear dissolved. The nightmare loosened. Hope took a real breath again. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a return. A miracle with a heartbeat and 4 paws. And somewhere inside that hospital room, Bravo, dusty, bleeding, exhausted, rested knowing one thing. He lived long, enough to see her safe, and that was enough. And after everything they'd survived out there, the desert, the chase, the taser, the knife, the fear, there was this one moment where the whole world finally softened. It happened the second the ambulance doors swung open outside Phoenix Children's Hospital. Emma sat on the gurney, wrapped in a fresh blanket, still clutching Bravo's collar like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. Bravo lay beside her. On his side, chest rising slow, heavy, exhaustion dripping off him in waves. His paws were bandaged, his fur dusty and matted, but his eyes, those tired warrior eyes, never drifted far from her. And then, a scream. Not fear, relief, heartbreak, love. "Emma!" Sarah Whitlock came running down the hall, so fast a nurse tried to stop her and just gave up. Her clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes, hair a tangled mess from days of terror. When she reached her daughter, she didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. She wrapped Emma in an embrace so fierce it looked like she was afraid the world might steal her again. Emma dropped the blanket and clung to her mother's neck. And for a moment, she didn't cry. But then the dam snapped. Her face crumpled, and she sobbed into her mother's shoulder. Deep, shaking, gasping sobs torn straight from the soul. Sarah cried too, loud, raw, shaking in a way that stopped the hallway cold. Nurses paused. Doctors stopped walking. Even a security guard turned away, wiping his eyes. Sarah cupped Emma's face, voice shattering. "Oh my God, baby, my baby, I thought I lost you." Emma didn't answer. She turned her head, searching. Her eyes found Bravo, Sarah, followed her gaze. And when she saw him, really saw him, her chest caved inward. This dog, this exhausted, bleeding dog who had given every last piece of himself to bring her daughter home. Emma slipped from her mother's arms, wobbling as her feet touched the floor, and dropped to her knees beside Bravo. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. "Bravo," she whispered, voice trembling, barely a breath. "You're my hero." A tear slid from her cheek, disappearing into the dust tangled in Bravo's coat. Bravo didn't lift his head. He couldn't. He was too tired, too wounded, too spent. But his tail thumped once. Weak, slow but certain. A signal, a message, a quiet "I'm here." Emma choked, holding his face gently. "You'll come back, right? He gets to come back?" Mason stepped forward, voice soft, steady. "Yeah, he's coming back. I promise." Two techs lifted Bravo onto a rolling stretcher. He didn't fight, didn't even try, but his eyes stayed locked on Emma as they pushed him through the double doors. Emma lifted her hand. Bravo blinked and wagged his tail again. Weak, but full of meaning. Mason felt his throat burn. He turned away, pretending his radio needed checking, even though it wasn't on. Sarah held Emma again, whispering into her hair, "You're safe, my baby. You're safe." And finally, the weight in the hallway lifted. Fear dissolved. The nightmare loosened. Hope took a real breath again. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a return. A miracle with a heartbeat and 4 paws. And somewhere inside that hospital room, Bravo, dusty, bleeding, exhausted, rested knowing one thing. He lived long, enough to see her safe, and that was enough.